In Hollywood, disappearing is usually a tragedy, a cautionary tale, a career that crashed and burned. But what if disappearing was winning? Mary Elizabeth Mastrantonio earned an Oscar nomination for her first major film role. She starred opposite Paul Newman, Tom Cruise, and Al Pacino. She carried a James Cameron blockbuster. She worked with Martin Scorsese twice before turning 30. She survived one of the most punishing film shoots in history, became the leading lady in a $390 million global phenomenon, and then, around the year 2000, she walked away from major motion pictures. Not because Hollywood rejected her, but because she rejected Hollywood. This is the story of a woman who understood something most actors never do, that the real power isn't staying in the spotlight, it's knowing when to step out of it. Let's fade to black. Mary Elizabeth Mastrantonio was born in 1958 in Lombard, Illinois. Not Los Angeles, not New York. Lombard, a working-class suburb west of Chicago, where nobody was trying to become famous. Her father was a bronze craftsman. Think about that for a moment. Not a producer, not an agent, not someone connected to the industry. A man who worked with his hands, shaping metal into art through patience, precision, and years of accumulated skill. That's the first thing you need to understand about Mary Elizabeth Mastrantonio. She didn't come from a world that worshipped celebrity. She came from a world that worshipped craft. And craft takes time. She studied at the University of Illinois before transferring to Juilliard, one of the most competitive and rigorous acting programs in the world. This wasn't a shortcut to stardom. Juilliard doesn't teach you how to be famous. It teaches you how to disappear into a character. Voice control, physical technique, emotional access, classical training, the kind of foundation that separates actors who chase roles from actors who embody them. While other young performers in the early 1980s were trying to break into film, Mastrantonio was doing something radically different. She was mastering her instrument. In 1980, she made her Broadway debut playing Maria in a revival of West Side Story. Not a small supporting role, Maria, the lead. The role demands that you sing, dance, and act at the highest level. Sometimes all at once, 8 shows a week, in front of a live audience that will let you know immediately if you're not delivering. There's no second take on Broadway. No, we'll fix it in editing. You either have the technique or you don't. Mastrantonio had the technique. This is important context, because when Hollywood eventually discovered her, they weren't discovering raw potential. They were discovering a fully formed artist who had already spent years building a foundation most film actors never bother with. She didn't arrive in Los Angeles hoping someone would make her a star. She arrived already knowing exactly who she was. Mary Elizabeth Mastrantonio's first significant screen appearance came in 1983, in one of the most explosive, controversial films of the decade, Scarface. Directed by Brian De Palma, written by Oliver Stone, and anchored by Al Pacino's volcanic performance as Tony Montana, Scarface was operatic, excessive, and unapologetically violent. It was the kind of film that demanded every actor bring intensity or get swallowed whole by Pacino's presence. Mastrantonio played Gina, Tony's younger sister. On paper, it's a supporting role, a character who exists in the margins of Tony's story. But Mastrantonio understood something crucial. Gina isn't just Tony's sister. She's the mirror of his obsession, the embodiment of everything he's trying to protect and control. Watch her in that role. Even with limited screen time, she doesn't disappear. There's a coiled tension in every scene, the way she holds herself, the flashes of defiance, the suffocating weight of being loved and imprisoned at the same time. She's not performing little sister. She's performing a woman fighting to exist outside of her brother's shadow. That's craft. That's someone who knows how to make every moment count. The film became a phenomenon, and Hollywood took notice. But the role that would truly change her life came 3 years later. In 1986, Martin Scorsese was making The Color of Money, a risky sequel to The Hustler, the beloved 1961 classic. The film would reunite Paul Newman with his iconic character, Fast Eddie Felson, now older, cynical, and mentoring a young hotshot pool player named Vincent, played by Tom Cruise, who was already a massive star. Mastrantonio was cast as Carmen, Vincent's girlfriend. And here's where things get interesting. Carmen could have been written as decoration, the girlfriend, the supportive presence. But Mastrantonio saw something else in the character, and so did Scorsese. Carmen isn't just along for the ride. She understands the hustle better than either of the men. She's calculating, unsentimental, and completely clear-eyed about what Vincent is and what she wants from him. Mastrantonio played her without apology. No softening, no making Carmen likable in the conventional sense. She brought an edge, a sharpness, a refusal to be the moral center or the emotional safety net. And she did this while holding the screen opposite Paul Newman and Tom Cruise, two of the biggest movie stars on the planet. Think about the level of confidence that requires, the technique. Newman was a legend with decades of experience. Cruise was at the height of his charisma and star power. And Mastrantonio, in her first major film role, didn't just survive those scenes, she matched them. The Academy agreed. At just 28 years old, she was nominated for Best Supporting Actress. That kind of debut doesn't happen by accident. It happens when years of training, discipline, and self-knowledge meet the right material at the right time. Overnight, Mary Elizabeth Mastrantonio was no longer an up-and-comer. She was a serious actress. The kind directors wanted in their films not to sell tickets, but to elevate the work. And then came the role that would test everything she had. In 1989, James Cameron was preparing to make The Abyss, a science fiction thriller set almost entirely underwater. Cameron's vision was audacious, borderline reckless. He wanted to shoot in a massive water tank with practical effects that had never been attempted before. No green screen safety nets, no dry for wet filming tricks. The actors would actually be underwater, sometimes for 12 hours a day, performing scenes while holding their breath. Mastrantonio was cast as Dr. Lindsay Brigman, a brilliant engineer trapped in a failing marriage, leading a deep-sea mission that becomes a fight for survival. The production became legendary, and not in a good way. The cast and crew spent months submerged in cold water. Divers stood by in case someone panicked or ran out of air. Ed Harris, her co-star, later described the shoot as one of the most difficult experiences of his career. And he wasn't exaggerating, but nothing compared to the drowning scene. The sequence required Lindsay to deliberately drown herself so that Bud, played by Ed Harris, could drag her unconscious body to safety and revive her. It's one of the most harrowing scenes in the film, raw, terrifying, and emotionally devastating. To shoot it, Mastrantonio had to lie still in freezing water while Harris performed CPR on her, over and over, take after take. He had to slap her face repeatedly to simulate resuscitation. The physical toll was brutal. The emotional toll was worse. She wasn't faking fear. She wasn't acting vulnerability. She was actually cold, actually exhausted, actually at the edge of what a human being can endure on a film set. And just before the drowning begins, there's a moment. Lindsay looks at Bud and says, "Bud, I'm scared." It's one line, 3 words, and it breaks your heart. Because you can hear in her voice that it's real. That's not a character afraid of dying in a movie. That's an actor afraid of what's about to happen to her body, trusting her scene partner, trusting the crew, and doing it anyway. When the scene finally wrapped, Mastrantonio reportedly walked off set in tears and told James Cameron she would never work with him again. She later softened that statement. Cameron himself has acknowledged how punishing the production was, but the story stuck because everyone who was there knew it was true. The Abyss was groundbreaking, visually stunning, a technical achievement that pushed the boundaries of what cinema could do, but it came at a cost. And for Mary Elizabeth Mastrantonio, that cost recalibrated everything. She didn't stop acting after The Abyss, but something shifted. The question she seemed to start asking herself was simple. What am I actually giving myself up for? And more importantly, is it worth it? After The Abyss, Mary Elizabeth Mastrantonio's career looked unstoppable. She had proven she could handle anything, physically, emotionally, technically. Hollywood had a clear path laid out for her. More blockbusters, more leading roles, more of everything. And for a brief moment, that's exactly what happened. In 1991, she starred in Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves opposite Kevin Costner, who was at the absolute peak of his stardom. The film was a massive production, castles, battle sequences, a sweeping orchestral score. Mastrantonio played Marion, but not as the passive damsel waiting to be rescued. This Marion had agency, moral conviction, and her own perspective on the conflict unfolding around her. Alan Rickman, as the Sheriff of Nottingham, chewed scenery with gleeful malice and stole every scene he was in. But Mastrantonio gave the film its emotional centre. The chemistry between her and Costner was palpable, grounded, believable, and charged with tension that felt earned rather than manufactured. Robin Hood. Prince of Thieves became a global phenomenon. It grossed over $390 million worldwide, putting Mastrantonio in front of the widest audience of her entire career. This was it. Peak visibility, peak marketability, the exact moment when most actors double down, when they strike while the iron is hot, when they leverage success into more success. Mary Elizabeth Mastrantonio did something else entirely. That same year, while Robin Hood was dominating the box office, she also appeared in Class Action, a serious legal drama opposite Gene Hackman. No spectacle, no special effects, just two actors in courtrooms and offices, working through moral complexity and family betrayal. The following year she made White Sands, a neo-noir with Willem Dafoe and Mickey Rourke. Then Consenting Adults, a psychological thriller about eroding trust in marriage. These weren't franchise builders. They weren't career moves designed to capitalize on blockbuster momentum. They were the choices of someone interested in the work itself, not what the work could get her. And then, quietly, she made the most significant choice of all. In 1990, Mary Elizabeth Mastrantonio married Pat O'Connor, an Irish film director. The couple had two sons, Jack and Declan, and by the mid-1990s she had made a decision that would have been unthinkable to most actors at her level of success. She moved to London, not for a project, not temporarily. She relocated her entire life to the United Kingdom to raise her family, living for a time in Kinsale, a small coastal town in County Cork, Ireland, about as far from Hollywood, geographically and spiritually, as you can get. Think about what that means. She wasn't taking a break with the intention of coming back stronger. She wasn't lying low between projects. She was building a life where her career fit around her family, not the other way around. In Hollywood, that's called career suicide. But Mastrantonio didn't see it that way. She saw it as the difference between being an actor and being a commodity. In the UK, she had access to British theatre. She could take roles that interested her without the constant pressure to stay relevant or maintain visibility. She could be present for her children. She could have a marriage that wasn't constantly disrupted by months-long shoots on different continents. She could breathe. The films she made during this period reflect that shift. Two Bits in 1995. A modest period piece. Limbo in 1999. Directed by John Sayles, one of American independent cinema's most uncompromising voices. These weren't films designed to recapture blockbuster glory. They were films made by someone choosing projects based on the people she wanted to work with and the stories she wanted to tell. To the industry, it probably looked like her career was fading. But Mastrantonio wasn't fading. She was refusing to burn herself out chasing a version of success that would have cost her everything that actually mattered. By the early 2000s, the family had moved back to the United States, coinciding with her sons getting older and her increasing interest in television work. And in 2000, she made one final major studio film, The Perfect Storm. Directed by Wolfgang Petersen, starring George Clooney, Mark Wahlberg, and Diane Lane, The Perfect Storm was based on Sebastian Junger's best-selling book about the real-life crew of the Andrea Gale, a fishing vessel lost at sea during a catastrophic storm in 1991. Mastrantonio played Linda Greenlaw, a real person, one of the few female swordfishing captains in a male-dominated, dangerous profession. The role didn't require her to be glamorous or vulnerable or emotionally tortured. It required her to be competent, steady, and strong, and that's exactly what she delivered. No theatrics, no proving anything to anyone, just quiet, confident professionalism. The Perfect Storm grossed over $328 million worldwide and became one of the highest-grossing films of 2000. It was a fitting final note, a return to large-scale filmmaking, but in a role that asked her to bring authenticity and restraint rather than spectacle. And then, for all practical purposes, Mary Elizabeth Mastrantonio's movie star career ended. Not with a crash, not with scandal or failure or public rejection. It ended because she decided it had served its purpose. By the early 2000s, Mary Elizabeth Mastrantonio was in a fundamentally different season of her life. Her sons were growing up. She had spent a decade living abroad. She had already worked with Scorsese, Cameron, and some of the biggest stars in the world. She had nothing left to prove. But here's the thing about actors with real training, with a foundation built on craft rather than fame. They don't stop needing to work. The work itself is the point. The question isn't whether to act, it's where and how and on what terms. Television in the early 2000s was changing. Shows like The Sopranos, The Wire, and 24 were proving that long-form storytelling on the small screen could be just as creatively fulfilling as film, maybe more so. Television offered something movies couldn't: continuity, depth, the ability to live inside a character for years rather than months. And crucially, for someone like Mastrantonio, television offered regularity. You could work without disappearing from your family for half a year. You could take a role on a series without uprooting your entire life. Mastrantonio leaned into that world. She appeared in Without a Trace, bringing her signature intelligence and emotional precision to a procedural format. She worked on Law & Order, Criminal Intent, one of the most respected iterations of the franchise. She had a memorable recurring role on Grimm as Kelly Burkhart, the mother of the show's protagonist, a character shrouded in mystery and danger. For fans of the show, it was a genuine revelation. Mastrantonio hadn't been in anything high-profile for years, and suddenly there she was, playing a role that required both warmth and lethal competence. The comment sections lit up. "I haven't seen her in so long! What a reveal! She's still got it." Of course, she still had it. She never lost it. She also appeared in the Punisher series and, most recently, Law & Order, Organized Crime. These aren't vanity projects or comeback attempts. They're the work of a professional actor staying engaged with her craft on her own terms. But television wasn't the only place she returned to. Mastrantonio also went back to where it all began: the stage. She performed at Shakespeare's Globe in London, one of the most prestigious theatrical venues in the world. The Globe doesn't care about your box office numbers or how many millions your last film made. It cares whether you can stand on a stage, deliver Shakespeare's language with clarity and power, and hold an audience's attention without cameras, without edits, without any of the tools that film actors rely on. Mastrantonio could, because she always could. One commenter, years later, put it perfectly: small in stature, huge in talent. And that's the thing about stepping away from the Hollywood machine. It doesn't mean you stop being an artist. It means you stop letting the machine define what being an artist looks like. Mastrantonio has been candid in interviews about her choices. She's spoken openly about prioritizing her family, about not wanting to sacrifice her children's childhoods for a career that would have demanded exactly that. She's talked about the relief of not being trapped in the cycle of auditions, publicity, and the constant need to stay visible. But here's what she hasn't done. She hasn't apologized. She hasn't framed her choices as regrets or compromises. She hasn't suggested that stepping back was a failure or that she wishes things had been different. Because for Mary Elizabeth Mastrantonio, this wasn't a tragedy, it was a strategy. And it worked. ACT 5, The Real Story, Tensra 1230, The Woman Who Won. So what really happened to Mary Elizabeth Mastrantonio? Here's what didn't happen. She didn't flame out. She didn't get replaced by younger actresses. She didn't struggle with addiction or scandal or any of the typical Hollywood tragedies we've been conditioned to expect. What happened was simpler, and in some ways, more radical. She looked at what Hollywood wanted from her, and she said no. There's a comment that appeared under a video about her, and it cuts right to the heart of things. The worst thing that can happen to an actress in Hollywood is getting old. Mary Elizabeth Mastrantonio knew that. She watched it happen to actresses before her. She saw how the industry operates, how women are valued for youth and beauty, how roles dry up after 40, how the phone stops ringing not because you've lost your talent, but because you've lost your marketability. And she understood something crucial. If you stay in that system, you will lose. Eventually, inevitably, the system will discard you. So she left before it could. But here's the other part of her story. The part that matters just as much. She aged gracefully. Scroll through comments from people who've seen her in recent years, and you'll notice a pattern. Growing old gracefully without plastic surgery. Still looks beautiful and human. Nothing about that has changed with aging. In an industry that demands women erase every sign of time from their faces, Mastrantonio refused. She let herself age naturally, and the result is that she still looks like herself, just older, still recognizable, still grounded in reality. That's not a small thing, that's a rebellion. Then there are the stories from people who've met her over the years. A fan who encountered her in Italy, where she helped translate in a hardware store. Someone who spoke with her at the Burlington, Vermont airport, where she talked warmly about Paul Newman. A crew member who worked with her on Robin Hood and remembered her as absolutely lovely, very friendly and approachable. Someone who saw her filming in Dublin and described her as incredibly beautiful and a very gentle person. Every single story says the same thing. Kind, friendly, approachable, lovely. Fame didn't change her. Success didn't corrupt her. She remained the person she always was, the daughter of a bronze craftsman from Lombard, Illinois, who understood that craft and character matter more than celebrity. And maybe that's the real lesson here. Mary Elizabeth Mastrantonio didn't fail to have a Hollywood career. She succeeded at having a life. She raised 2 sons. She stayed married to the same man for over 3 decades. She worked when she wanted to, on projects that interested her, with people she respected. She lived in places she chose, not because a studio demanded it. She returned to the stage, to Shakespeare, to the kind of work that first made her fall in love with acting. She did exactly what one commenter said. She reached a point in her life where she could do whatever she wanted, and did it. That's not disappearing, that's mastery. There's a line from one of her films, The January Man, that fans often quote when they talk about her. Her character says, "In 100 years, we'll all be dead." It's a reminder not to let things hold you back. Not to waste your life chasing approval or validation from systems that don't care about you as a person. Mary Elizabeth Mastrantonio took that philosophy seriously. She didn't chase immortality. She didn't try to freeze herself at 28 and stay there forever. She didn't sacrifice her humanity to remain a movie star. She chose something harder and rarer. She chose to be whole. And here's the final twist, the thing Hollywood never seems to understand. By stepping away, by refusing to play the game, by building a life outside the spotlight, Mary Elizabeth Mastrantonio became something more interesting than a movie star. She became the woman who got away, the actress who didn't need Hollywood more than Hollywood needed her, the artist who proved you can arrive, succeed and leave, all on your own terms. So when people ask, what happened to Mary Elizabeth Mastrantonio? The answer is this: nothing happened to her. She happened to Hollywood. She showed up, did brilliant work, earned respect and recognition, and then walked away before the industry could take anything from her that she wasn't willing to give. She didn't disappear. She transcended. And 30 years later, we're still talking about her. Not because of scandal or tragedy, but because her story offers something Hollywood almost never provides. Hope. Hope that you can be talented and successful without destroying yourself. Hope that you can choose family without regret. Hope that walking away from the spotlight doesn't mean you failed. It means you won. Mary Elizabeth Mastrantonio won. And she did it by understanding something most people spend their entire lives trying to learn. The real art isn't staying famous, it's staying yourself. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this story of an artist who defined success on her own terms, please like, comment, and subscribe. And as always, I look forward to seeing you in the next one.